How's it going, team? Welcome back to another episode of the Average Stats Podcast. Something different today. I think I say that a lot. Something different today. I should probably stop saying it because it then negates it being different if I keep saying that. Anyway, as you're all probably sick of seeing, or was sick of seeing, is, the end of the 2024 season and all them recap reels and shit like that. Don't worry, this isn't a recap reel, but I am going to do a quick review of the podcast. I painfully went back and listened to myself, but had the pleasure of listening to the guests again. And, to actually give it, I never listen to myself, and I don't know if that's an issue and something that, in 2025 I should be focusing on assessing my performance as a interviewer, podcaster, insert here, whatever. But I think after doing this exercise, and it was only very brief, there's a certain section of the podcast that I went back to and listened specifically for this section and for the next episode of the podcast, is that there's so much insight from the guests, and I've probably been selling myself short by not listening them back. Obviously, I have the conversations with these people, and it can very much feel like a blur. So what I did is I went away, and I a bit late this week with the episode than normal, but I went back and listened to the section. And if you're a regular listener, you will know this, that there's always a section of the podcast where I ask the guest 3 habits that have been beneficial to maintaining the success that they have or got them to where they are today. And in their own right, all these people are super successful, super dedicated, super passionate. Said a hiccup then, sorry. Super passionate about what they're doing in life and where they've been in their journey, and habits and routines have been instrumental in that for them. So I just picked out some of the regular ones. I probably missed some. I've just been jotting as I go, and I've been listening to these in the car, so a lot of it's from memory. Yeah, going over the regular ones and the most sort of frequent ones that multiple people have said. And it's funny that this is the number one, because a friend of mine, she said to me that, it's a fitness podcast. It's too much reliant on fitness, and I can appreciate that view. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but the podcast isn't a fitness podcast. It was never intended to be a fitness podcast. Obviously, we have coaches on and PTs, but they're people that I'm friends with, or people that I believe have a message that's worth sharing, and their own personal journey is something that people can get a lot from. But exercise and fitness was the number one reoccurring recommendation, and that wasn't just from coaches in fitness and exercise. That was from, I think, Christina Meditation. She said it. Joe, I believe, said it as well. Amy, who's a stress management coach. We've had all these people come on, and regardless of them being in health and fitness, the number one thing that they've all said is that fitness and exercise plays such a key factor in, keeping them grounded, keeping them sane, having this outlet. And I know from personal experience that for me, my physical well-being is second to none. Arguably something I have to focus on the most for me to be cognitively my best, mentally my best, like keeping my mental health intact. And when we talk about mental health, I'm not talking about mental illness, I'm talking about just general mental health, mental fitness. And again, going into another subject, I think people misconstrue that as like, as soon as you hear mental health, you think, oh my God, depression, anxiety. And yes, they are factors of that, but I'm talking about the mental health. Like, we all have mental health. Our health can be good, our health can be bad, but I think fitness is absolutely key. And I would challenge anybody, and I would love to sit down with anybody and have this conversation on the podcast as to how can fitness and health, exercise not benefit us in a positive way mentally, if we're doing it safely, of course, and we're using it as an outlet and we're not abusing that system. Obviously, if we're talking about abusing it, obviously there is a negative thing, but I think if we do it in a healthy and regular way, it's only going to create an outlet. So fitness was number one by far. Another one that secondly follows, and honestly, it's not a fitness and health podcast. It is a health and wellbeing podcast, but nutrition and hydration came up so much, and probably the most impactful one of when this came up was when we spoke to Paige, and obviously her journey with eating disorders, and one of the most inspirational and sort of journeys that Paige had and what she shared. And actually we've got another thing coming with Paige very soon, and I can't say too much about it yet because it's a project that's not been released and it's not my project, but once we have that, I'll be sharing that with you guys, and you can listen to Paige's story in even more in depth and a lot more closer to the bone. But yeah, and when we had Angus on as well, and he was talking about his journey with his eating disorder, and you know, just to listen to the impact in which nutrition and hydration, taking hydration out slightly, but nutrition specifically, and when it's not abused but not prioritized, and it has this negative relationship built with it, like, it's shocking. And I think it's only something that you can truly appreciate or gather when you speak to someone who's been to the absolute bottom of that spectrum and been institutionalized through having such negative eating habits and things like that. And then the journey of them both in their own individual right, fantastic, inspirational. Go and check out them episodes. I believe Paige's is episode 5 and Angus is episode 17 if I'm right. But them guys, and they really, really instill the importance of having a positive relationship with fitness and nutrition, Angus particularly, and then Paige with her journey and the impact in which she said that eating food, whole foods, and prioritizing hydration, what that had, that effect, and the difference she felt in herself when she did that is massive. But again, Amy Carter mentioned it about like whole foods, regular foods, things like that. Sammy Hill mentioned it. Molly mentioned it, the period nutritionist. They were all regulars, and again, not just like PTs and fitness coaches saying it. Everyday people in different things, stress management, period management. I think again, it's so easy to just believe that nutrition isn't important. But I always say it, and you're probably bored of hearing it, that cliches are cliches because often they're true, and you are what you eat. You can't run a car off shit diesel and shit fuel. Like, if you put that shit stuff into you and it's all that it's getting and it's all that your body has, it's going to cause big issues. And again, in the next coming weeks, we've got a big guest on, one that I'm super excited for, and she's someone that I've wanted on from day one. And we'll talk all about nutrition. Again, when we had Kate on, Kate Kavanagh, sports nutritionist, she was explaining to it the importance that it has with athletes. So yeah, fitness, nutrition, they're probably 1 and 2. And then I'd say mindfulness came up a lot, but in different ways. And I'm going to blanket this, and obviously it sounds like I'm being biased by picking mindfulness when this is a wellbeing podcast, but it did come up a lot and in different ways. Meditation was one that was mentioned. Obviously, when we had Christina on, a meditation coach, she did such a fabulous job and such an insightful job of telling us the benefits of her own personal journey and the benefits of meditation generally. And I know the benefits of meditation. It's not something that I practice regularly, but it is something that makes you present. And then it goes back to something me and Joe talked about. Shout out Joe Baker, my boy. Like, be present in the moment. And I'm going to do some honourable mentions, and why I'm talking about Joe. Hopefully he listens to this or sees this bit, but Joe said that he doesn't start the day with social media. He won't go on, and he says when he does that, he was on the back foot, and he feels like his day is all reactive then rather than proactive. And I love that, and it's something that after the podcast, I tried to implement, and something that I try and be more mindful of it now. And the impact is massive. If you get up and just get that natural light in, which a few guests talked about, rather than getting the screen light and rather than being on your phone and seeing, the bliss and the glam of everybody else's lives, if that puts you in a shit mood because you've seen something that's shit and you're like, oh God. And that's the start of your day. That's the beginning of your day. Joe's bang on. You're starting the day on the back foot. Honourable mention. Having a morning routine without social media or technology. Big shout out. And then getting outdoors was a big honourable mention, but I think this comes into the mindfulness category. I think, again, them two sort of marry well into what we're talking about now. Getting outdoors is huge. I think if you go back to any history book, specifically like philosophy and stoicism, you see this regular thing that all these great thinkers and these great philosophers of the world, they all spent time outdoors, they all went walking, and they all had the ability to clear the minds by being outdoors. And there's studies that say when you go outside and, people get out in the woods or they get up and hike, that what it gives your body and the releases of the chemicals and the hormones and everything is massive for your happiness and massive for sort of just your general well-being and mental health. So it's something that probably gets overlooked. I think Sammy said it when I had Sammy Hill on, that a lot of people now buy these. I have one, but a lot of people buy these treadmills and they are great. They have a purpose, don't get me wrong. I use one on a regular basis. But now we've sort of forgotten to get outdoors. We'll just rather stay indoors and get our steps that way, bang a treadmill on, put the telly on, stay indoors, and all well and good. We're in the middle of January now and the weather's shite and it's minus weather and it's been snowing and no one wants to go outside, and that is fair enough. But I think that does continue through the year and you're missing such a vital part of, again, not sounding overly dramatic, but sort of our foundations as humans of just being outdoors and enjoying the outdoors. So yeah, again, getting outdoors, avoiding social media in the morning, meditation, all come under this mindfulness caveat. And just because I've got it wrote down here, and I'm going to throw it in with this one, it's my podcast, say what you like. I'm trying to help. But there's Christina on when I asked her the 3 habits or routines she'd recommend to somebody. She actually talked about setting boundaries. And that's one that stuck with me since the episode. And it's such a great one because we talked about it in that episode about people not really understanding the boundaries and values what they have. I believe, and people can tell me I'm wrong, and I'd be again happy to have this discussion, but it's all well and good saying that we should understand what our values are as people and what makes us who we are, and even purpose, going as far as finding our purpose. There's an expectation to know that very early on, and I think you only learn your values and your purpose through trying things and failing things. But again, I think that also goes back to what I brought up with boundaries. You sort of have to have your boundaries pushed to understand where once you know that boundary's been pushed, you should make mental note of that. If that person abuses something of your friendship or something that your kind-heartedness and, oh, well, they're just a friend. And I'm someone that could learn from what I'm saying here, and I probably should. Is not excusing other people's behaviour just because of relationships with them and their circumstances. If that's something that upsets you and breaches a boundary that you have, you should set that boundary. You should be able to have a conversation with someone and obviously, do it in a way that isn't overly confrontational, isn't going to cause ruptures through that relationship. But setting boundaries is so important. And I said it on that episode with Christina that people that I know that have been through therapy and they talk about it, boundaries, it's something that it comes back to a lot, and allowing people to walk all over them boundaries and not setting them in the first place. And then when people do introduce them boundaries and install them into their life, they have a greater sense of sort of well-being, and they've set the parameters in which they feel safe and they operate, and you essentially give that to people and they can like it or lump it, because ultimately if they're breaking your boundaries, they're creating a negative impact in your life. And if you have someone in your life that's causing regular negativity and it's just flowing and flowing and flowing, why do you want that person in your life? Well, that's a genuine question. Why would you want someone in your life who is going to push your boundaries, make you feel shit? And we all do it. I've done it. Where you give them the benefit of the doubt because that's how they've always been. And it's sunk cost fallacy. James Smith, in one of his books, talks about it. It's like relationships. Sometimes we just stay in them and keep them because we've had them for so long. because of sunk cost fallacy, we're like, oh, well, I've known that person 10 years and we've been friends 10 years, but oh, it'd be a shame if I lose that. But if that person brings you nothing, it's about having that emotional maturity in that relationship and that honour to yourself to be like, not cut them off, not be like, right, we're never speaking again, but reduce the exposure in which they can have a negative impact in your life. So setting boundaries, honourable mention on the mindfulness. And I don't want this to be too long, so I'm going to finish with this one. And this might seem shocking, but you can go back and listen. I'm not lying, promise. And I may have missed some. If I've missed some that you regular listeners have picked up on and found like a connection to, let me know in the comments. Send me a message, and I'll talk about it maybe on the next week's episode, which I'm going to film, which is sort of the opposite of this one. But yeah, it's rest. Again, Joe Baker, what a guy. You can quote him on episode 6. Rest as hard as you work. And anyone that knows me knows I have a personal dislike to grind culture. I think it's toxic, and I think as much as we do need to work hard and have discipline and push through things when we don't necessarily like them, grind culture isn't sustainable. It's not healthy, and why would you want to obliterate yourself to not reap the rewards? You know, imagine you see it all the time. These people sacrifice the 20s and the 30s, and they grind and they grind and they grind and they grind to make some money, but because they focus so much on the money and the job and the grind that they don't have anyone to share it with after. They don't have anyone to particularly enjoy what they've sowed. And when you listen to people, I think Tony Robbins talked about it on the last Chris Williamson podcast. It's so true. You need to be balanced in life and, you know, definitely work hard, definitely apply yourself and push them boundaries. But don't cut your nose off to spite your face just because someone might be like, you're resting. You have 8 hours sleep a night. Like, we should be flipping the narrative to be like, you don't have 8 hours sleep a night. You don't rest. The people who prioritise rest and sleep shouldn't be the ones who are made to feel stupid. And if there's anything that society can do in 2025 is push that more and not make people feel stupid. That's definitely not what I'm promoting, but like, argue the narrative into which someone's like, oh, I like 3 hours sleep. Whoop-de-doo me. You'd be like, nah. Just Google anything. Look at Matthew Walker. Go and watch his TED talk about sleep. Like, just introductory stuff into why sleep is important and rest is important. You know, something else that gets mentioned in the podcast by a few people is that when we rest, and if you're not watching this, I just did the little quotation marks around rest, is sometimes we think we're resting, but we're actually just doom scrolling, or, you know, Chris Williamson said it. I'm sorry for referencing. You can call me a modern wisdom fanboy all you like, but, you know, this is a good point. He said that often our feet and our head do not rest in the same place. And just think about that. Think about it. When he said it and I listened to it, I was like, fuck, that's a good one. It's true. And I think once we can get our feet and our minds in the same place when we're resting, that's true presence. That's sort of, you know, that togetherness internally. So some things to think about there, team. And I hope you enjoyed something a little different. My review, part 1, let's say, of 2024 and the fantastic opportunity and luxury that I had to speak to people. It really rejuvenated my motivation. Is rejuvenated? Reignited? Really reignited the passion that I have for this podcast. Not that I lost it, but it just restored the fire. It moved it around a little bit, got the embers burning a bit hotter. As to that, it's just fucking cool to sit and listen to people and speak to people, and what an honour it is to have people on. 2025, hopefully we've got some big guests, personally, I think, lined up, and we'll just keep moving, keep going, and thank you all so much for the support so far. Yeah, shout out to the sponsor, bit of a strength. Check the guys out. Go and get yourself some quality fitness apparel. Best bags about. Yeah, www.viribusstrength.co.uk and use Average Jack at checkout. Get yourself a little discount. That's Average Jack at checkout. And then, yeah, head over to www.jackmckeenan.co.uk. That's where you can find me. Subscribe on YouTube, Average Jack's podcast. Follow me on the socials and get in touch. Don't be strangers. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you want to hear. And I'll try and accommodate it. But yeah, peace.